Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Thursday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. A report says that Jeanie Buss is going to remain governor of the Lakers for at least 5 more seasons. What exactly does that mean? We'll break it down next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everyone for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. No matter how or where you get your podcasts, this one's always free and never behind a paywall. And of course, Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 35,000 subscribers to the channel, Andy, all of whom are wondering exactly what it means if Jeanie Buss is going to be the governor of the Lakers for the next 5 seasons or so. Does that mean Mark Walter is not going to have any influence? We'll talk about that based on a report that the Athletic's Sam Amick put out on Wednesday. Before we get there, though, I do want to let people know that today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Other things we want to cover today. What exactly do you do with Rui Hachimura in an era where you now have DeAndre Ayton in your starting lineup? We'll talk about potentially the what the Lakers might or should or could do with the Shake Milton contract, and of course, Andy, the draw for it's not the IST anymore. What's it called now? The Emirates Cup or something?
Emirates Cup, yeah, I believe.
Yes.
It's, you know what, for the old heads like me, it's always going to be the IST.
I'm old enough to remember when it was the IST in season tournament.
Sorry, man. I'm a creature of habit. I've been calling it the IST for too long.
Mama named him Clay. I'm going to
I mean, it's just like, respectfully to the folks over at crypto.com, it's always going to be Staples to me. It's always going to be the IST. You can call it whatever the hell you want. The Coliseum is always the Coliseum. You can give it whatever naming rights you want. That's how strong the brand of the IST is. That's
right. So we'll get to all that stuff as the show goes along, but we will start here with this report from Sam Amick at The Athletic. That kind of talks, it's really ostensibly about the Lakers and Clippers. It's about, street, as he calls it, streetlights versus spotlights, part 2, 2 teams that are both appearing to try and position themselves to be major players over the next couple of off seasons.
I sincerely hope, by the way, the streetlights versus spotlights thing, like that's coming from Sam and not being messaged from the Clippers.
No, that literally the Clippers aren't doing that again.
Like, my God, they lost the right to call themselves the streetlight team when 2 high-profile free agents, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, forced their way to the team. Like you lose all ability to refer to yourself as the little engine that could when those 2 guys forced their way to the team. When also, too, by the way, you have the richest owner in sports. Right. Shut the bleep up with that. Again, if it's coming from the Clippers, if it's coming from Sam, our friend, that's just literary license.
Right. It's just a reminder of how that rivalry was framed. But their streetlights, if at best, are streetlights in like Beverly Hills. They're very fancy streetlights.
Until Mark Walter bought the Lakers, honestly, compared to the Clippers, the Lakers were the streetlight team. Honestly, like they were like lamps. They could barely forget streetlights. They couldn't even afford lamps. They had trouble paying the electric bill.
No, there were 2 or 3 times when I would be walking down Venice, take the kids down to Venice Boulevard, see all the crazy stuff going down there, and you see at least 2 bus children making balloon animals with a hat in front of them. It's crazy.
It really doesn't work anymore when you're the team with Ballmer money.
Right, it doesn't. But anyway, so that's what it's ostensibly about. But as both teams are potentially trying to become players in the next couple of off seasons, of course, 2 off seasons from now, there is at least the hope around the NBA for some teams that Giannis Antetokounmpo will be available after potentially leaving the Bucks. So we'll see how that goes. But
or Nikola Jokic perhaps leaving the Nuggets. That has some people wondering, just because for what could be purely economic reasons, he is informed
100% economic.
Well, it could be for now. Down the road, it could, for those unaware, Nikola Jokic told the Nuggets He's not going to be signing an extension with them this summer, which makes total sense on its face. He can make considerably more the following offseason, and he knows he could break both of his
80 million more.
Yeah, he could break his legs and they would still give him the full, but like the money won't be the problem.
He could break their legs and they still give him the money.
But it does leave, at least in the eyes of some people hopeful around the league, just the sliver of possibility that he could be surveying the landscape and feeling like Denver can't provide him any more championship opportunities, so he wants to find them somewhere else. Why not the Lakers?
Strange thing to be wondering, as Denver's had one of the best off seasons of any team in the NBA, but that's okay. So this gets to what some of my we'll talk about it over the course of the show, whether these plans, whether you're talking the Lakers or any other team, in terms of purely putting your eggs in the high profile superstar free agent basket is a really good idea. But what is most, I think, interesting and of immediate priority for Lakers fans is the note from Sam that this agreement with Mark Walter, with the Buss family in terms of the purchase of the Lakers, per a team source, Sam writes, Buss's agreement with Walter in the NBA stipulates that she'll remain the team's governor for at least the next 5 seasons. That kind of thing, Andy, on its face, it probably worries Lakers fans, because like the whole point of Mark Walter buying the team is suddenly you have this influx of resources and brain power and all this other stuff, and the Lakers are going to go from a very, very thin organization with very little staffing for what you would think a team like the Lakers would have, and not a ton of resources and small scouting departments and all these other things, to the Dodgers, who poop out these things for they have resources coming out of every part of their organization. Do you trying to clean up that
organization? I thought you were going to say orifice.
Well, no, I was. And I stopped because that's gross, and I wasn't sure if I was allowed to. Well, I was going to say something to the effect of they have resources coming out of all of their orifices and whatever, and I held off. But you brought us back.
Whatever, it's biological.
It is. We all have them. So when you hear this sort of thing, do you have concerns that Mark Walter is not going to put his stamp on the Lakers?
No, not even not even a little bit. Like, I'm going to be honest, my people like Sam Amick, Ramona Shelburne, other reporters who are all great at their job, they're friends of ours. Like, we have nothing but respect for all of them. Nobody has defined in any tangible way what Jeannie's role is other than governor. Like, the idea that she will be running things, like running what exactly? Because nobody spends $10 billion on a purchase to have the next 5 years being run by one person with like a 15% share. And by Jeannie's own admission, for years, she's never been heavily involved in basketball operations. She has said she does not consider herself qualified to do that. She doesn't want to be doing it. So with that in mind, like, the role to me feels very ceremonial. It feels in some ways like Jeannie, we know for reasons that are totally understandable, that she would be uncomfortable with the idea of the Buss family letting go of this franchise, even though there were many, many pressing, obvious needs to do it. But she's going to want to stay connected. So she has a title, but Jeannie is not really a boat rocker to begin with. So in some ways, who cares? Like, I'm picturing it's something of an ambassador role, which Jeannie, to be honest, will be very good at. She's good at that stuff. She could rep the team at ownership meetings or whatever, which again, she's good at that stuff. But like, Jeanie has never struck me as really wanting to make a ton of big decisions when that was actually her role.
There's places where I agree with you and places where I don't, and ultimately I think we're kind of talking about the same thing, and I'll explain why I don't think this is at all something Lakers fans should be concerned about. We'll do that next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all the money go? Between dining out and online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money, it's not just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you can stop managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner becomes smoother than ever with Monarch Money. You can track shared accounts, personal accounts, set goals, stay on the same page without stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for 50% off your first year.
So I don't know if you meant it this way, but like you sort of like, I think like ceremonial, or as a descriptor. I don't think what she's going to ultimately be is ceremonial or sort of a empty title or like window dressing or whatever. I do think she's
It's not necessarily how I meant it.
That's what I'm saying. I don't and that's what I was saying before. Like, I think we're ultimately kind of talking about the same thing. I think what Jeanie is going to have is a role, because this, as far as I mean, I'm not an expert on the ownership structures around the league, but like, I think we're entering into a unique setup here where you have a change of ownership where the previous owners don't exit the stage, and another person who's been part of the ownership, they just sort of flip-flop here. I think I mentioned this when the news broke about this. If you were going to hire someone to run the Lakers, run them as a business, like run the operation, knows the league, has a great relationship with Adam Silver, is a respected partner around the league and all that kind of somebody, if you're like, I need a team president for this, who's got a good resume, you'd land on Jeanie Buss. Like, that part of it, she's very good. And these are important things. So what I think we're ultimately going to land on, and I think it's kind of what you were getting at, was where Jeanie kind of functions as a team president and a CEO. But the CEO is not always the person who owns the company. The CEO can be hired and fired. That's why companies have different CEOs all the time. That doesn't mean the CEO is not an important job. It just means that there is ultimately a voice or voices that can be above that person. And I think especially on the basketball side of things, which, if we're being honest, is the part that Lakers fans
It's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
If maybe this would make my thoughts on this more clear. She will be involved with handling things with the Lakers. I don't think she is,
because I agree with you. Like, she's not Jerry Jones, who thinks she should be making basketball.
She will not be making decisions. I think for the most part, she will not be making decisions that Laker fans care about. Similar to when she was running business ops for the Lakers, and by all accounts, really, really good at it. And that matters. It clearly matters. But if I'm being honest, fans didn't care. Fans did not care about that part of Jeanie's job. They cared about Mitch and Jim's part, and now, Magic and Rob, and now Rob. Like, they care about that stuff. And I do think the closer Jeanie got to that side of the building, the less comfortable she was. I've never felt that she's been particularly comfortable ever since becoming the ultimate shot caller in the organization. She might be a governor / CEO / ambassador / voice that actually matters, like all of those things. But she will not be the ultimate shot caller because that's the guy with the highest shares in the company, because that's how this stuff works. And she's not going to be running basketball ops because she doesn't want to do that anyway.
And she can't be fired. And so, like, you can't fire the owner. You can come up with it. You can demand a different power structure. You can try to buy him out. You can be like, she can't be fired. So, like,
Sure.
what I think you're going to end up, like, agree with, like, I think we're talking about the same thing. She might be even in charge of, here's how I want to do it. I want to pattern kind of what we've done with the Dodgers. I want to expand our basketball operations department. Here is our money. It's a pot of money that we're going to use. This is what I want the organization to look like. If you want to be in charge, if I think we can, come to, the league, the people, all these. So it's like, let's work on staffing this thing out in the way. But if Mark Walter at some point decides, you know what, Rob Pelinka is not getting the job done, Jeannie's not going to be able to overrule him.
No,
because he signs the checks. And so
I think she'll be overseeing a lot of this transition, which again is something that I think
Ned Colletti was with the Dodgers for a couple more years before he was sort of sunset into, sort of an emeritus role, did a lot of media stuff with the team TV station, all that kind of stuff. And it should be noted, Ned Colletti did not have an ownership stake in the Dodgers when the Guggenheim Group bought them. So, yeah, I mean, the fact that you can't draw a one-to-one parallel between this and the Dodgers stuff because the Buss family still has an ownership stake. I do think that changes things, even though the ownerships, the percentages obviously will flip to Walter. And it's going to be different, and there's going to be some awkwardness, and in 2.5 years, there's going to be some story about something where there's, Jeanie is, wishes they'd done something differently. They're going to have to fire Rob, and it's going to be hard for Jeanie or whatever it's going to be. Like, there's going to be stories here. It wouldn't shock me, by the way, if 3 years into this 5-year thing, Jeanie decided she wanted to step down. It wouldn't shock me if it happened faster than that.
Nope.
What it is a runway where, like, we're not throwing you out of the building. It is, quite frankly, smart not to throw them out of the building because there's a tremendous amount of institutional knowledge that Jeanie Buss brings to this job, that Jesse and Joey Buss are doing.
I hope that there's a role for Joey and Jesse because they're both really good at what they do.
And it just, the operation needs to get significantly larger. It doesn't necessarily, the Buss family themselves, especially if you take some of the management of the basketball ops over time and funnel that in a different direction. That's fine because the resources are going to be there. The Lakers have been under-resourced, and they shouldn't be under-resourced anymore, but they're not going to be, Mark Walters is not going to let him spend his money unless he thinks it's being done in an effective way.
But even that, though, that expansion that everybody expects and has been, frankly, long overdue for the Lakers, that in and of itself is going to be an area of comfort that Jeannie's going to have to get used to because,
no question,
like, as much as finances, I think, did dictate a role in the front office being so small, the insular part of it was that's Jeannie's comfort.
That's Jeanie. Absolutely.
Like that, even if budget wasn't an issue, there is a non-0% chance the front office would have remained that small anyway.
Yeah.
Because that's, I think, been her comfort zone.
It's her comfort zone, and it's in the interest of the people who exist in her comfort zone.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
So it's a compounding sort of thing where, there isn't another organization in sports where, on the business side, maybe Linda Rambis would, because she's been around a long time and she knows that side of stuff and whatever, but she also protects Kurt's voice on the basketball side to whatever level of influence Kurt has. That wouldn't exist in a different organization.
Absolutely.
And Rob's stranglehold, is that too strong a word? But Rob's hold on the basketball ops department would look significantly different in many organizations. I'm not saying it wouldn't exist, but it would look different in most organizations, if for no other reason than there'd just be more people around. I don't think Lakers fans should worry about these reports. Yeah, look, I mean, the deal hasn't even closed. So they're not going to make changes until, this is all voted on and all that kind of stuff. It wouldn't shock me if we see a little bit of an influx of resources start flowing in on certain things even before that. But the next year or so are probably going to look pretty similar to what they look like before, except if Mark Walter wants something done, it's going to get done. And that's how it's going to be. I may ask around a little bit, like, are there other ownership situations like this where the governor is not the majority owner? I'm kind of curious if this happens in other spots around the NBA. So we'll check on that. Maybe talk a little bit about these questions of the plan, so to speak. But also, Andy, you have a very interesting perspective on post DeAndre Ayton, what the Lakers might need to do with Rui Hachimura. So we'll get to that next. So just to wrap up, Andy, what we were talking about with the Sam's report, it is like framed in this idea of both teams are trying to keep flexibility for next offseason, 26 offseason, and then the 27 offseason. A lot of fans are interpreting that as the Lakers aren't doing certain things. They looked at like the DFS contract, for example, where he wasn't offered a full, the Lakers didn't compete with Houston. And if, or the relationship soured, there are all kinds of explanations, but ultimately Lakers certainly look like they would rather either pay someone else or just didn't want to pay DFS. They look at things like that, or the relative inactivity of the Lakers, and say this is evidence that they're just holding back because they want a clean cap for next year or the year after that.
I need to see more evidence of things that they could have done that felt closer to, if not a no-brainer, like that's a pretty good deal, but it would have crept into 2027 or 2028 and would theoretically get in the way of, I don't know, the summer of 2027 cap space-a-palooza. Like, I need to see or hear more evidence of them actually passing up on those opportunities, because like DFS, for example, like it turns out his deal with Houston could go on for 4 years, but there's only 2 years guaranteed. And there will be people who say, well, why didn't the Lakers just do that? They could have kept him around, whatever. And that's true, I guess. And maybe DFS was more open to doing that with Houston because he has roots in Texas and, is more comfortable there. The state taxes are different, whatever, and wasn't as open.
Maybe he was picking the Lakers. Right. Who knows? Maybe he felt offended that the Lakers would not offer him this. Maybe he thought he could get more long-term offers around the league. And it turns out basically 2 guaranteed years was the best he was going to get. Obviously you want Rob Pelinka and Team DFS to negotiate in good faith and amicable enough, just because it's the best way to do business. But the reality is they essentially traded Dorian Finney-Smith for DeAndre Ayton, Jake LaRavia, and a little bit of extra free agency money while keeping all of their assets. And I firmly believe that they had a sneaking suspicion that Ayton was going to be available before all this happened.
Absolutely, which expands their options, which is great for a team that we kept talking about heading into this offseason. We don't know how much they can actually do because it doesn't feel like they have a lot of options. Like, they managed to keep their options wider by virtue of keeping all of their assets and still getting a starting caliber center and a young player like Jake LaRavia that they hope keeps growing under their watch. But if you said, would you trade DFS for DeAndre Ayton, Jake LaRavia, a little bit of extra cap space, and the ability to keep all of your assets, even somebody who would say, no, I'd rather have DFS, I think it's hard to land on that. And also, what the F are the Lakers thinking? Like, respectfully to DFS, he's not that great of a player. Like, so I need to see, I think our everydayers know Brian and I are not shy about making our opinions known. We think the front office is screwing up. We've both made it very clear over many shows. We think the Lakers could
so very many shows, Andy,
that the Lakers could and should do better than Rob Pelinka. But everything that doesn't happen that immediately turns the Lakers into the front-running contenders for the 2026 championship is not automatically a black mark on Rob Pelinka. Like, those things can be separated.
And it's interesting, too, because a lot of this, and we were talking about this before the show, a lot of these things are framed in the context of LeBron. And, the Lakers are, have to be careful. They're wasting LeBron and all these other things. And I think more people are coming around to this, too. It's like, it's not really, you don't have to worry about angering LeBron because, I guess LeBron could ask out. And we talked a little bit about this, I think either at the end of last week or early this. Like, if he LeBron really wanted out, he wouldn't have opted in. He could have opted in with a trade ready to go and all these other things.
He's had multiple opportunities to leave. He's like Bob and he's like Bill Murray. And what about Bob? Right. He never leaves.
I think, the odds seem to be increasing that this could be LeBron's last year in Los Angeles. The Lakers certainly made it, by all reports, pretty clear that they weren't going to offer that, one-and-one thing that he's been doing. And whether that means that Team LeBron knew that and didn't ask because of that, like they just knew what the answer was going to be, whether it's because Team LeBron also wanted some flexibility for next year, and that option year, in the reality is that option year makes it harder. I think teams, don't know exactly what the plan's going to be. Like, this is cleaner for them too. Or maybe they asked for it. The Lakers said no, but everybody understands it's in everybody's interest not to embarrass LeBron, not to create a thing. And we're just all going to agree that they didn't ask and we didn't offer. Whatever it is, I think there's a good chance that LeBron is not a Laker next season. The guy that you have to make sure is okay with the, keep your powder dry plan is Luka, because that's the guy you need to get, pen to contract here. But in terms of movement, we spent a lot of time telling people, like, it's going to be real hard for the Lakers to do stuff. They got lucky, frankly, that DFS, the Ayton opportunity came along, and however the DFS thing went down, the Lakers got lucky that they were even in a position to address, the center position as they did. They got lucky that they'll have this little pot of money that they can put towards something between now and the end of the summer. And I think eventually they will. And because if that didn't happen and they just brought back DFS, they'd be in worse position. So it's like they didn't have any flexibility. The box was created before we got here. So,
and that's on Rob. It's on Rob.
Yes,
that the box exists the way it is, but it's still the box.
It's still the box. And so you criticize Rob for the creation of the box. And I happen to think that a lot of this talk of flexibility, prioritizing flexibility, as much as it sort of annoys Lakers fans, and I think it's a stupid way to build a team, because the guys you want to plan for are never available. They just aren't. Every once in a while, but they're never, broadly speaking, in the history of the NBA, this is not how stars change teams. So
certainly not lately, at the very least. At the very least, not lately.
It's not common. Maybe the new CBA will change it, but it's not. I think
the new CBA is going to make it less common.
I happen to as well, but there's still some unknowns. I think a lot of the messaging and I believe this certainly could be coming from the organization, is really built around the notion of it's easier. It sounds more proactive to me as an organization. Well, we've got a plan. We're looking out in the future. We're going to maximize Luka. We're going to do all these things. So we're going to be really careful and make sure we're not, eating into this space with moves or reckless moves or whatever, than it does to say, yeah, we kind of effed up over the course of 2 or 3 seasons in terms of how we were structuring our roster and how we were doing things. And so we really just can't make the team as good as we would like this offseason. So we're not. The first way sounds better. I think I think they will make a move that eats into 27, for example. If something really good comes along, they just don't have the stuff to make something good come along right now.
At least for the time being. I will say this. If they actually think summer of 2027 is better messaging that will keep the fans engaged, it would be the latest example of me saying, I don't think they read their fan base well at all. And I think they don't know how to message their fan base at all, because I've yet to see you and I encounter a lot of Laker fans in our line of work between this show, between the show that I host on 710 ESPN, weekly Lakers talk, Twitter, IRL. I have yet to encounter a single one of them excited by the summer of 2027. Like the prospect of, you know what, we're going to hold off on really engaging in 2 years of Luka's prime because something might be happening in 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
If that's their messaging plan to keep the natives from getting too restless, I would workshop that one and come up with a different one, because it's not working.
Of course not. But it's also, you're comparing it to the option B in this case is honesty would just say, yeah, we can't do anything.
What about we're still working and looking for deals. It's been, you don't have to land on something that specific.
No, but Rob does.
A week into July.
Rob does. Rob has always operated this way, where he needs to present like there's a plan, like there's a vision. There's something like this all screams to me kind of classic Rob. It's like, it's okay. Like, I know you're upset, but there's control here. Like, we're going to be really busy this offseason. We're going to keep we save our power because this offseason we're going to do a lot of stuff. The messaging always changed, but it's always this sort of proactive, don't worry, we've got a plan. And the alternative in this case is, yeah, we just can't do anything. So we really, really hope Luka is cool.
I would assume they are in constant, I really, truly would assume, because it's GMing 101, that they're in regular contact with Luka. Yep. And the truth is, if Luka is okay with this, none of it matters. Really, if there is this assumption, I think, from a lot of people panicking about the summer of 2027 reports and plan, that basically Luka's completely out of the loop. They're not in contact with him at all. And then just August 2nd, they're going to talk to Luka for the first time in 3 months, put a sheet of paper in front of him and say, ta-da! I would like to think they're going over stuff with Luka. And if they're presenting options to Luka and they're like, look, we'll do whatever you want this offseason, but we really don't love the options in front of us. We only have so many assets at the moment. We apologize, but that's the situation. We actually think 2027, for a variety of reasons, maybe not even just cap space, may present us with more opportunities. If Luka says, fine, while I still don't know if it's the best way to handle this, the number one thing you're worried about isn't a problem.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think what they're probably communicating is, you said it before. The key here is, what are they turning down? What have they said no to? Obviously, they're not willing to put in Connect, and we'll quit here and get into some of this tomorrow. They're not willing to put Connect and a first rounder and and something else to get Andrew Wiggins.
Rui is the guy that comes up the most, because he's got the biggest salary.
He's got the biggest dollar. So those 3 things for Andrew Wiggins, and that's too much to give up. I think the most people, maybe each of those things individually. Would I trade Rui individually for Wiggins? Consider it. Would I consider putting Connect in a trade for Wiggins? certainly would consider it. Would I consider putting the one in? I would consider it. I probably wouldn't, but I would consider it. But all of them together, I would not. And so not doing that doesn't mean you're keeping your powder dry. It just means you're not doing something dumb for the sake of it. But let's table the rest of this, because there's a little bit more to kind of cover in this conversation. Plus the conversation of what to do, what role should Rui play with this team next year. So we'll do all of that for Friday's show. In the meantime, Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can hang out with over 35,000 subscribers. We'll see everyone tomorrow.